someone who may be more leaning towards the serial type of killer. I know through my sources they are working very hard now to make a determination as to whether or not Bryan Kohberger is responsible for other unsolved or cold case murders. So it is very common with respect to someone who has this type of fetish with respect to stalking these type of individuals and then carrying out these heinous acts.
This is Reporter Room with Jessica Della Davies.
Today, we are going to be digging into the Bryan Kohberger case. We have so much stuff to get into. I want to thank all of you who have subscribed to Reporter Room. We are trying to make it to 30,000 subscribers and need your help to achieve this goal. We have so much to get into on the Bryan Kohberger case, so let's get started. Today, we're going to be talking about the different faces of Bryan Kohberger and his chameleon-like ability, just like Ted Bundy had. And we're also going to be discussing the fact that many news outlets are reporting that Bryan Kohberger is being investigated for the possibility of being a serial killer. We are learning that there may be a delay in tearing down the 1122 King Road house. The owners of this house donated it to the University of Idaho. Now, the University of Idaho is reaching out to both defense and prosecution attorneys to see if there would be any objection to them tearing down the house, and if there are, then those objections would go before a judge and the judge would decide. And I'm going to show you how much Bryan Kohberger's chameleon-like ability is similar to Ted Bundy in just a second, so please stay with me. Everything I'm sharing with you today is my opinion, and opinions are not facts, so please don't send any negativity to anyone. Let's be kind and good to each other. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and give this video a thumbs up so I know you were here. Brian Enton is reporting that a identification, we don't know if it's a student ID or if it's a driver's license, was found in one of the homes where Bryan Kohberger was living. We don't know if this was the Pullman, Washington house, or if this was his parents' home in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, because warrants were served with both. But he is reporting that there was an identification belonging to one of the victims in the house. The fact that Bryan Kohberger never got cold feet when he saw that Ethan's Jeep, his red Jeep, was parked out in front, and the fact that Kaylee's Range Rover were parked out in the front, this didn't make him nervous at all. He seems like he was very intent to entering this home and doing what he had planned to do. Now, everyone is presumed innocent and Bryan has not been found guilty, but it seems like Bryan had the wherewithal, had the drive, had the stamina to commit these heinous acts in spite of the fact that there was a DoorDash delivery. And we don't know if the knife sheath was left intentionally as a calling card. Maybe he had planned for this to be his signature, or if it was left by accident. And I want to show you how similar Bryan Kohberger's chameleon-like appearances are to Ted Bundy in just a moment. But first, let's listen to former FBI agent Stuart Kaplan.
Well, there are two explanations. I think the latter is he grabbed something on his way out in his twisted way or in his twisted mind, as more of a trophy type of thing to take with him. Or the more sinister and the more concerning aspect, would he have possibly entered into this home at some earlier time and date and grabbed something unknown to any of the occupants of the house? And that is something that he had on his person or had in his possessions before the date of carrying out these murders.
And I'm going to share some more information about souvenir taking and SK type of personalities in just a moment. But first, let's look at these photos of Ted Bundy and juxtapose those against the photos of Bryan Kohberger. Just like Ted Bundy, he is able to change his appearance. He looks different in every single photograph. Now, I'm not saying that Bryan Kohberger is doing this intentionally, and I just want to clarify that everyone is innocent until proven guilty. But look at the differences in these photographs. You can see an eyewitness would have a very difficult time identifying the same guy as being Bryan Kohberger, depending on which photo was taken. Now, Ted Bundy had a similar ability to change his appearance. Now, some of it Ted did intentionally when he was running from the law, but a lot of it was not intentional. He just had one of those faces that was able to change into something else depending on the camera angle, the lighting. He looked like a completely different person. So you can see why in that case, eyewitnesses had a hard time pinning down who Ted Bundy was, and law enforcement had difficulty catching him. What do you guys think? We're going to listen to former FBI agent Stuart Kaplan about whether or not law enforcement is going to uncover something else, and then we're going to dig into souvenirs. So please stay with me. Let's listen in.
I'm not going to be surprised if something else turns up. I think what had always been a concern to the law enforcement community is the number of victims and the brutality in which these murders were carried out. I think it's just not consistent with someone who would have gotten up on some particular day for the first time and then decided to carry out a murder. This person obviously had to have had some sort of planning and plotting and some sort of mental defect, certainly at the time carrying out this type of horrific, quadruple homicide. And I think the law enforcement community, the investigation has really ironically taken off and has accelerated since the date of the apprehension. Now, law enforcement in connection with this case did an incredible job with respect to leading up to the apprehension of Bryan Kohberger, but it has really, from my sources, accelerated with respect to making a determination as to whether or not he may have been responsible for other murders closer to where he resided with his parents.
And now we're going to talk about souvenirs. Then we're going to dig into whether or not law enforcement will be able to get a conviction against Bryan Kohberger. Let's listen in to Stuart Kaplan.
Technology is advanced, and certainly in the technology with respect to the FBI and on the level of technology that has been developed by the FBI and in partnership with various technology companies, it is almost virtually impossible to thoroughly scrub and delete any of your social media platforms, whether it's photographs, text messages, Snapchat, or otherwise. And that's just the reality. The technology that law enforcement now has is able to dive back in and be able to retrieve certain footprints that will then be able to reveal what you thought at the time you deleted, whether it's a text message, a photograph, or some other form of communication.
So it sounds like law enforcement is digging into Bryan Kohberger and any possible leads that will prove some kind of a pattern of behavior or lead them to another case.
And I think that given that the FBI has been able to assist local and state law enforcement in this particular case, has been a treasure trove to open up and expand the breadth of this investigation.
So will law enforcement be able to get a conviction against Bryan Kohberger?
Now, with respect to whether or not Bryan Kohberger, I think his arrogance, I think there's an obvious degree of arrogance that this defendant maintains and has with respect to thinking that he's better and dominant of those people. I think that's his modus operandi, where he has a dominance feeling that he is stronger and more powerful and smarter. But ultimately, I think it showed that he was not stronger or more powerful or smarter, because law enforcement quickly was right on the heels and obviously led to his apprehension.
Please subscribe if you haven't already and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a new video.